Mac Warner.
Angie, thanks for the question. And this one's up close and personal with me. Today in Louisville, Kentucky, a friend of mine is burying his son, Adam Ray, killed in Afghanistan 10 days ago. My son, Stephen, is on the front lines in Afghanistan today, clearing roads, doing the same job that Adam was killed doing 10 days ago. His best friend's wife is at FOB Altamore, the same FOB that my forward operating base that my son's at. So the women of West Point and the rest of the military are serving up close and personal against this determined enemy that comes at things from a different perspective than any of us. And they're in the fight just with everybody else. So my son's serving right there on the front lines with his best friend's wife doing the same combat engineer road clearance that he's doing. My daughter Lisa is at West Point and is challenging herself as to where does she want to end up, which branch is she going to choose. Another daughter's best friend, Corey Cook, is on the front lines in Afghanistan, in Iraq, doing the same road clearance. But it doesn't stop there. It's not just my kids, and it's not the service that I just did. But folks, let me tell you, in Morgantown, if you go down there right to the left of the waterfront and the waterfront Jeep there's a tree memorial. We have 19 trees planted to people who fell on 9/11 and in the subsequent War on Terror who had direct connections to Morgantown. I'll mention just a couple. Shelley Marshall. Diane Hale McKenzie was my brother's secretary at the Pentagon, was killed on 9/11. That's how this thing got started. They didn't have anything to bury, and my brother had done a little plaque for her. And that's what everybody in her family went up to. He went to the funeral down in Georgia, and they went up and touched that plaque because that's what they had to hold on to. Mary Lou Haig was killed on 9/11 in one of the towers. Her mother, Liza Adams, the wife of Richard Adams of United Bank, came and at the dedication of the tree memorial told me that she had that much of her daughter's elbow to bury. That's all that she had left of her daughter. And I could go on and on. There's a fellow there, Jake Fritz, his brother, Dan Fritz, came home one weekend with my son. This was about 2 years ago. And we had the entire weekend, a great weekend, did some great fun things, went to ball games and so forth. And at the end, I said something about to one of my kids to say goodbye. Your brother's getting ready to leave. And I turned to Dan and said, do you have brothers, sisters? And his face went pale. My son pulled me aside and said, Dad, don't you know? I said, no, son. He said, the reason he's here is because this is the 1-year anniversary of his brother Jake getting brutally murdered in Iraq, was kidnapped, taken outside, shot with 3 other American soldiers. Dan Fritz was in my house the entire weekend. I had no idea. Where do we get men like this? We get it from the homes right here. Each of you probably know. I know some of you have sons and daughters serving in the military. We are at war whether we like it or not. They declared war on us in 1997. Osama bin Laden said he is declaring war on the United States of America. We've got to fight the fight whether we like it or not. All right? So if we're going to fight it, we need to fund it properly, and that's what each of us is up here ready to run and go represent this district in the United States House of Representatives, because that's where the funding starts, to make sure that when we do go to war, that's where the declarations of war ought to be coming from. And when we do declare war, we ought to fund it properly and go in there to win. Not go in and half-step it, to go in and say we're going to do a surge this month, but 18 months from now we're going to pull it out. That's what the president, our commander-in-chief, did at West Point back in November. And my daughter called me right after that speech and said, Dad, what was he thinking? He got the answer right on the surge, but then he said in the same paragraph that he's going to pull them out 18 months later. It's muddled thinking, and that muddled thinking goes and gives power to our enemies to say, let's keep trying to get across the borders. Let's keep trying to do underwear bombings. How absurd to talk about reading the underwear bomber, his rights. His rights? Those are our rights. Back to what I said earlier. We the people, those are our rights, not his rights. Okay? So, to answer your question, to get back to the point of Iran, you would think that here's a guy, a retired military, standing up here to think that, well, we need to go in there and strike him. Well, that's what the Israelis did back in 1980. And perhaps it needs to happen again, but not necessarily. We don't always have to look at doing the hammer approach. We have special operations forces, some of the most highly trained, I know they're the most highly trained soldiers in the world because I've worked with them. I have personally transported war criminals from Sarajevo, Bosnia, back to The Hague, the International Court, to be tried for war crimes. I've personally been on the blackout helicopters flying in night conditions for their safety and our safety, because we didn't want people taking shots at us as we transported these people out of Serbia back to The Hague. I know firsthand the professionalism of our soldiers and our trained military, all right? So we will put those trained soldiers to work, whether it's ours, Israeli, or somebody else, and we can go in and we can take apart Iran piece by piece by piece. We can take out oil wells, send them a message, have lunch in Paris with the Iranian ambassador, and say, look at your watch. Here in about an hour, you're not going to have near the oil reserves that you had an hour ago, okay? And when they don't agree to that, then we go and take it to the next step and the next step. It can be done, folks. We don't have to just go in there and hit with tactical nuclear strikes, which is probably what it would take to take down the Iranian facilities now, because they've been working at it for so long, they've put it underground. Normal conventional weapons will probably not take out the nuclear reactive material that they've been working on. This is a complex problem, but we are the most highly trained forces in the world. We can do this thing. We just need to apply our minds to it, have a determination to win this war on terror, and get the job done. Thank you.
Cindy Hall.
I don't think I can say any more to that. It was wonderful, and I agree with every word. So I'm not going to go over all of this, but I'm going to change topic for a minute. Obama has an agenda that he is not speaking about, and in order for us to change Congress, we have to talk to our neighbors and our friends and get them out to vote under the Republican ticket, and we need to move Mollahan out because he's our one vote in Congress, and I know that we're just a small part of the whole Congress and Senate and House, but the Tea Party started with one, and now there are thousands across the United States, and you're a part of this, and we need to continue this process and move Mollahan out. Sorry, Mollahan. If he was here, I would tell him that. But thank you very much. I'll end it, and thank you very much for being here and allowing us to speak with you. We've enjoyed it, and hopefully you have received a bit of an education as to our backgrounds and beliefs on the issues. Thank you so much.
Patricia Levinson.
I agree wholeheartedly with Mac. It's time for Obama to start listening to the generals who know what they're doing in this situation. And this is not a time for smooth talk. This is a time for let's get the job done.
All right, well, we'd like to thank you all for coming. And we'd also like to obviously thank the candidates for coming too. And if any of you... And I'm sure if any of you want to stick around and speak with the candidates, they'd be more than happy to talk to you. And they've all put information out on tables in the lobby, so be sure to check that out on your way out. And I think my wife has an announcement as well. About the table.
Oh.
About our table? Okay. Okay, apparently she doesn't. But the other thing I was going to say was that if you didn't sign in at our information table on the way in, please do that on your way out so we can keep you informed about future events that we're doing. Thank you very much.